Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in the Northwest Territories, where the union that represents workers in the territory wants to know why agency nurses receive more pay than staff nurses, even though technically they're under the same collective agreement. Luke Carroll has that story.
The territorial government spent $5.2 million on agency nurses last year. The NWT Health and Social Services Authority says agreements with nursing agencies vary, and that the territory pays the agencies anywhere from $105 an hour to $164 an hour, the average being around $125 an hour. A spokesperson for the NTHSSA says the government doesn't actually know how much the nurses get from the agencies. But the Union of Northern Workers provided CBC News a screenshot of an advertisement for one of the nursing agencies. According to it, wages offered to come to the NWT would be around $100 an hour, not including bonuses and per diems. An entry-level nurse for the Northwest Territories Health and Social Services Authority makes around half that, $49 an hour, not including benefits. The NWT Health Minister says she'd rather do without agency nurses, but the choice is between closing health units in hospitals or hiring agencies. The Health Minister says the territory went 15 years without using agency nurses, but needed to again with the obstetrics unit closed in Yellowknife in 2022. CBC News spoke with an NTHSSA employee on the condition of confidentiality. This is because of possible impacts to their employment. They say that the territory needs a strategy to avoid becoming dependent on the costly agency nurses. They say it's becoming a labor issue, as nurses are working for the health authority without a new collective agreement, and are training agency nurses who might make twice their salary. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Plans to cut staff and beds at Stanton Territorial Hospital are on hold. Earlier this month, the NWT's Health and Social Services Authority said reductions were necessary due to COVID-era funding running out. Now, there's new money from the federal government, $36 million dedicated to NWT healthcare. That means no cuts to beds and staff at this time. The move comes a week after NWT Health Minister Lisa Semler said her department would not be laying off staff. 3 days after a national Pharmacare deal was announced between the federal NDP and Liberals, Yukoners are rejoicing. The deal was a major NDP condition going into the federal confidence and supply agreement, which expires in June 2025. But despite the fanfare, some people in the territory say there's still work to do. Rafsan Farouk Jugal reports.
Cautious optimism, feeling pretty good about it.
Contraceptive and diabetes drugs could be nationally covered under a new deal between the federal NDP and the Liberals. This is a step in the right direction for Pharmacare advocates here in Whitehorse.
It'll be important to try and already start expanding the formulary or move towards it before the next election. We know that policies can be undone. It would not be very popular. People are really looking forward to free contraception and diabetes medications, but we want to make sure that we can expand it and have a road path to expand it as quickly as possible.
Dyke wants to see coverage for all drugs. That means coverage regardless of one's private healthcare insurance or lack thereof. The Yukon Federation of Labor met with Yukon MP Brendan Hanley and the Federal Minister of Labor Seamus O'Regan last week advocating for a universal pharmacare system. Like Dyke, they also want to see universal coverage for all drugs at the pharmacy, not just a select few.
And once you put in a universal pharmacare, that's going to save that as well for employees and employers in those situations. And the other thing is Canada really needs to make this step to come on to par with other countries that have a universal health care. We are one of the only developed countries that does not have a universal pharmacare plan along with a universal health care plan.
The Hoskins report on pharmacare recommends a phased approach in scaling up a national pharmacare framework. Contraceptive and diabetes drugs are just one step for Dyke. The list of covered drugs needs to expand in the long run for him.
We got to keep adding more to them, but this is the effort of a lot of mobilization and of sticking true to the principles of the Canada Health Act of how we want healthcare to be implemented, which is for everybody, regardless of status or of private insurance, and publicly administered, and it's so important.
The legislation for Pharmacare is expected to be tabled in Parliament later this week. Rafsan Faragjugo, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Questions about the quality of hotel accommodations for medical travelers surfaced today in the NWT Legislative Assembly. We brought you a story last week about medical travelers having negative experiences in Yellowknife's Quality Inn. They were placed there when the Kescorey boarding home hit capacity. Today, Mackenzie Delta MLA George Narasu said he too had a bad experience at the Quality Inn.
There have been countless stories of how unpleasant of an experience it has been for the patients to stay in this hotel. Mr. Speaker, I myself can confirm these stories because I was a patient who was referred to this establishment because the boarding home was full. The noted hotel is not a suitable place for anyone to stay, let alone patients. The hotel does not have adequate heating. Most windows are screwed shut. There's mold in the washrooms and inadequate housekeeping services. Due to the boarding home being full, I had no choice but to stay at the hotel. I stayed there one night, and the next day I pleaded with the staff at the boarding home to get me a room as soon as one becomes available. Later that morning, I received a call stating that a room is available, and I moved there for the remainder of my stay. There are others who are not that fortunate and have to stay in the hotel for a few days too long.
NWT Health and Social Services Minister Lisa Semler says capacity at the boarding home has increased by about 50% since April of 2023. Semler says there's been a recent increase in demand for medical travel related to dental services. Nunavut tabled its annual budget today. The $2.1 billion budget is expected to run a deficit of $21 million. Finance Minister Lauren Kusagak spoke with reporters before his budget address. He says the focus of this year's budget is the territory's housing stock and related infrastructure.
I believe we've built over 500 units so far, and we're on the books to build another couple hundred this year. So I think by 2025 we'll be really close, if not further than the 1,000 that we have to plan for that in that time.
Those targets are part of the territory's plan to build 3,000 homes across Nunavut by 2030. Kusagak says housing affects a lot of other issues in Nunavut, like mental health. He says this budget should give everybody a bit of comfort. Kusagak says money is also being invested in healthcare and emergency services, along with filling 31 positions in the territory's Family Services Department. Some residents of the Katlodeche First Nation are still waiting for new homes after the flood of 2022. The NWT government says it's fulfilled its obligations, but KFN's chief wants government to stay involved in helping the victims. Carla Ulrich has that story.
Unprecedented flooding in May 2022 wrecked homes, infrastructure, and businesses. KFN knew it would take time to rebuild, but didn't anticipate last summer's devastating wildfire season. April Martel, chief of KFN, says they are still trying to help flood victims.
We still have a lot of work that needs to be done with the flood. Like, there is a lot of repairs, a lot of replacements, and because the fire completely took over the flood process, now we're going to work on flood right now. So I hope GNWT is more open to that and mindful of there's people that have been going through trauma after trauma.
Martel says residents received this letter in early January from the Department of Municipal and Community Affairs, stating that the government has fulfilled its obligations with regards to the flood and directed residents to contact KFN from now on. In an emailed statement, MACA said the letter states that they have closed off files for funding, which was expended up until June 2023 when KFN assumed responsibility for the flood recovery program. But Martel says there is still work to be done with people's homes.
Some were not inspected properly. So now we have to inspect it. So that's why we got a contractor here that's professional, that will get the job done and properly inspect the homes to say, look, I think your home is a write-off, because it wasn't happening the last time from our contractors and that.
Martel says they are working with the federal government to repair and replace homes, but she says MACA should not be closing files because flood victims still need support. Carla Ulrich, CBC News, Fort Smith.
What do I like? I like open fires, moonlit nights, chatty letters, rainy days. I like daydreaming. I love this colorful little island of ruby, emerald, and sapphire. Yet often my dark moods come. I'm possessed body and soul by this depression. They say women shouldn't write. Some days I almost give up. But I cannot contain my imagination. I made Anne real. I gave her my love of nature, my love of books, and my childhood dreams. My greatest happiness would be to climb the alpine path and write upon it a woman's humble name.
Lucy Maud Montgomery battled depression, rejection, and sexism to become known around the world for Anne of Green Gables and 19 other novels.
When my grandfather, Charlie Chaplin, first arrived in Hollywood, it was a place of dreams. But my grandfather clashed with some very powerful forces in America.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Stand away from the stand!
I'm Una Chaplin. This is Hollywood Exiles. It's about a war of ideas that tore apart friendships, ended careers, and affected families like mine.
Hollywood Exiles, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Does public transit really need more police officers? And so this is it.
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
It is now believed that Titan was destroyed. It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? How is that even possible? Well, with a little bit of help, I think we can explain it.
About That with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes your world.
All right.
Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
It goes on like this, and on and on and on and on.
It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want. On Canada's News app. Download the free CBC News app.
Bad hair days.
We all have them.
Even as scientists.
I think I know my place. It's not making art.
What? This is a whale? That's incredible.
I'm piloting a boat in the fjords of Norway. I love this job.
You never listen to me.
You never think things through.
Your honeymoon phase is officially over. We never had a honeymoon phase.
You really gonna make me say it?
Oh, yeah.
Fine. I need you, Max.
So much drama. I love it. You're tired of that? Still get tired of that.
There are calls tonight for police to be more proactive in dealing with domestic violence. It comes 4 months after a Northern Ontario man with a troubled past shot and killed 4 people, including his 3 children. Katie Nicholson has more.
So when I got married, there was 4. Was there a chance that things could have been handled different?
Angie Sweeney's friends spend a lot of time wondering what could have saved her life.
The cops know his history, right? We might not all know it, but the cops know the type of person they're dealing with.
Sweeney was shot by Bobby Howlert on October 23rd, just days after breaking up with him. Howlert then drove to his second home and shot another ex-partner, killed his 3 children, and then turned the gun on himself. The day before her murder, Sweeney called police to make him leave her property. Police say they had no grounds to make an arrest or hold him. But Howlert had a record of assaulting police officers and a history of intimate partner violence. Amanda Bjorna wonders if it would have made a difference if police were allowed to share that information with Sweeney.
If they came and they said, listen, we're a little bit concerned because this man has such a violent history, like we're concerned for you too at this point, we need you to get to safety, it might snap a little bit more in that woman's mind, right?
The Ontario government says it's looking at legislation that would allow police to disclose someone's history of domestic violence to current partners, something known as Clare's Law, which has been brought in 4 other provinces. Until that happens, the Sault Ste. Marie police chief is looking for a workaround.
We need to think outside the criminal code and use more intuitive, proactive approaches to say, what can we do for this victim?
His force is looking at whether officers could connect women at addresses where there have been a number of domestic-type calls with victim services resources, even if no charges were laid.
It may in fact be you need a safety plan and you need to get to a shelter. We suggest you do it now. We'll help you do that. Would it have helped in this situation? I don't know. My gut is it would.
Hoping to push for even more change, Sweeney's friends and family formally requested an inquest on Friday. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Sault Ste. Marie.
The federal government has introduced a new online harm bill. The legislation is supposed to protect children from bullying, exploitation, hatred, and violence on the internet. Rafi Boudjikanian has the details.
The Liberals are clearly hoping to make a statement with this legislation. They had been telegraphing last week, as Parliament was on an off week, that it would be the first piece they presented upon their return, and that's what's now happened. The legislation does propose a lot, chiefly in the goal of reducing harmful content to Canadian internet users, specifically children, minors. And it defines harmful content in 7 different categories. Some of those do focus on children, such as content that sexually victimizes a child. But their categories are broader. Some of them include content that foments hatred. And to enforce all this, the government would create a new regulator, the Digital Safety Commission, think like the CRTC, but for the internet, when it comes to 2 specific categories, content that sexually victimizes a child or intimate content that's shared without someone's consent. The commission would actually have the ability to go to online platforms and tell them you need to take this down within 24 hours.
We have rigorous safety standards for things like my son's Lego at home. Yet somehow none for the most dangerous toy, not just in my home, but every Canadian home, the screen that is in front of our children's faces.
This is not the government's first try at acting either. It initially proposed similar legislation before the last election, then promised it would reintroduce it during the campaign, but it took several rounds of consultations with community groups, with experts to get to this point, the NDP pointing to that delay.
They finally announced steps to move forward on online harm. They promised to do so 100 days after the election. Now we're at almost 800 days. Their inaction has meant that kids were harmed, that kids actually were exploited.
The Conservatives, meanwhile, have already said they look at this legislation as Justin Trudeau's latest attack on freedom of expression, and they plan to fight its passing. Rafi Boudjikanian on CBC News, Ottawa.
A new helicopter rescue service is launching in the Yukon. The company is called Team Skookum. On Friday, it performed a mock rescue in Whitehorse, training its new members. Team Skookum specializes in long-line helicopter rescues and provides on-scene medical care. The company says the services will fill a gap.
The Class D rescue technique is not available here in the Yukon outside of our national parks. And oftentimes the safest way and most efficient way to rescue folks in the backcountry is with this very technique.
Anne says the intent is to complement search and rescue. The nonprofit is partially funded by 3 Yukon mine companies and will rescue injured workers at industrial sites, as well as those in need of help in the backcountry. Major League Baseball players are up in arms over an apparent wardrobe malfunction. They say their new uniforms look cheap, feel flimsy, and are unattractive. And to make matters worse, the pants appear to be see-through. Thomas Dagla has more.
With spring training giving baseball fans a first look at their favorite teams.
He's 2-2.
New uniforms are providing a view many never asked for. Posing for pictures, players' pants can now appear see-through. With a shirt tucked in, the look has been described as vaguely resembling a diaper. As for those redesigned jerseys, well,
the names and the numbers have shrunk to Lilliputian size.
I hope this is helpful to some of you.
Mike Hauser collects Toronto Blue Jays jerseys and bought the new one right away. He posted this video comparing the authentic products from last year and this year.
It kind of feels like a tea towel.
As soon as I opened it, I realized these are not upgrades. They're charging me more money for way less of a product.
On the Blue Jays official online shop, the new top-of-the-line Vladimir Guerrero Jr. jersey costs $629.99. Designed by Nike and produced by sportswear maker Fanatics, the new uniforms come after a 6-year redesign process.
This was done in order to make the jerseys lighter and with a better athletic performance for the players, but that still doesn't hide the fact that aesthetically, it doesn't look pleasing.
From players, reviews are mixed, with LA Angels slugger Mike Trout posting, "Change can be good, and I'm a big fan of these." While Blue Jays outfielder Kevin Kiermaier tells the Washington Post, "I like last year's way better, and my opinion matches a lot of opinions in here."
They have been tested more extensively than any jersey in any sport.
Mike Hauser already returned his for a refund.
If they have to, go back to using what wasn't broken.
Major League officials are listening to player feedback, but so far there's no plan for any further change before the regular season starts in late March. Thomas Daigle, CBC News, Toronto.
Soccer players from across Nunavut competed in Iqaluit this weekend in the 2024 Nunavut Men Futsal Championship. 4 teams vied for the chance to attend the national competition this April in Calgary. Abdoulaye Sami is the tournament's organizer. He says they received donations and equipment from other organizations. Sami says that extra support allowed more players to attend the tournament.
So now we're going to have the winning team. I think there is 9 players, and we're going to take 4 to 5 players from different teams.
Communities in the territory. Racers for the Ivakak 2024 Challenge took off from Umiuyak, Nunavik today. 9 mushers are competing and they hit the course with full bellies. They were all treated to a feast before setting off, and they will need all the calories they can get. The teams are expected to travel up to 80 kilometers a day before they reach the finish line in Pavernatuk. She's a legend around the Yukon, and this week Jillian Campbell was honored with a special tribute as part of this year's 60th Rendezvous Festival. The CBC's Virginie Anne was there for the big night.
Ask anyone in the audience and they will tell you, Jillian Campbell is unforgettable. On Saturday, the Kwandon Cultural Center in Whitehorse was packed for her tribute. There was some kicks, some tricks, lots of feathers with a touch of singing, all to honor the legendary performer.
It's sort of, she embodies for me the spirit of Rendezvous, because it's traditionally coming out of a cold winter. You're coming back together. Everybody's been hibernating. Maybe they've got cabin fever. They're ready to see their community again. People like Jillian, entertainers, create a space together and create a magnet that brings the community together.
Campbell, who has been known to impersonate Klondike Kate, first took the Rendezvous stage back in the 70s. She quickly became a star and an inspiration. Now, decades after her debut, Campbell is smiling as she watches the new generations take over.
Oh my goodness. I mean, I'm overwhelmed with the affection and kindness. If I've helped someone along the way, I'm just thrilled to bits. I had nobody to copy, to emulate. I had nobody because, well, I just didn't, but I'm just little old me.
Campbell likes to joke that while she can't kick as high as she used to, she still is the star of the show. Virginie Anne, CBC News, Whitehorse.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a good night.
$1940 50 شهرين ورقت اللي كلا وقتهم كم مقتول ولا كلا بلك تقتالوا وما وكلا على أقسم وقتنا كيف اللقاق بلك تقتالوا وما بلك تاسم الأقسم ويجي وقتها أقسم جماعة.
My name is Amanda Paris, and I am constantly thinking about culture, race, and social issues. So I want to push these conversations forward.
We found that there was animal meat fat in plastic synthetic hair.
There was a time where I'm like, should I have kids because the kids are going to be black?
I've been fired from my dream job. What's the worst that can happen now?
Now is the time to take the group chat to the real world. A 6-part series. This is For the Culture.
Watch free on CBC Gem.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Hey, you're some friends, aren't you? Stand here and now you try and blackmail her. You disgust me. Every one of you.
Coronation Street. Watch free on CBC Gem.
We've won the costume contest every year.
Bunny! Oh, they're squishing me. What have we done?
Nothing's more fun than winning! Oh!
That's a fact. Drum circles are fun too. That's also a fact.
Yeah!
You know what else is a fact? I have the best damn team in the world.
Frig. Friggin' frig off.
What in
the flying friggity frig was that all about?
That was hilarious.
It's just a bit of fun.
Son of a Critch. Watch free on CBC Gem.
Being Black in Canada, a space for news, documentaries, arts, and more. Celebrating Black people and their stories. Find everything from interviews, insights, Black culture, and conversations. Visit cbc.ca/Being Black in Canada.
My grandfather, Charlie Chaplin, clashed with some very powerful forces in America.
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
I'm Una Chaplin. This is Hollywood Exiles.